people, I have missed you. This is Via Williams for any of you I haven't met, and it is 2022, and it has been a month since we have been here. And you are usually like, I am here at noon every single Wednesday, and it has been definitely a break, like the biggest break that we've taken since we've started these, and it'll be 2 years, I think, in like April. So for those of you who I haven't met, I am the president of Kinney brokerages, and involved with the leadership team at Place. And I also have a phenomenal business called Her Best Life, and I'm a co-host of the Empire Building podcast. So for all of our new guests who are joining us in 2022, I have done almost every role in real estate, I'm pretty sure, over the last 20 years. I'm a second generation real estate agent, and I just have a passion, as does our company, Kinney Companies, for training and for mentoring agents. And so I try to bring the absolute best in class that I can on a particular topic to you guys, to agents, every single Wednesday to do training. And this is one of those blessings of COVID. This started in March of 2020, when we realized that our 8 brokerages that we have here in Western Washington needed training that was super fresh. Like literally, we were pulling people from our brokerages who's gotten listings in the last week, and what do we do? And so it's just evolved from there. I'm also happy to share that we're going to start turning these into podcasts. We've had a lot of requests for that. So stay tuned for that, and what that's going to look like and what it's going to be called and all that. So I'm really excited about it. We have people live on Zoom, you guys, of Phoenix, Arizona, Fairfax, Virginia, Seattle, Eugene, Oregon, Southern New Hampshire. Oh my goodness, Everett. Thank you, Susie. I mean, Atlanta, Georgia, Switzerland. Switzerland. What? I'm blown away. Like, welcome to 2022. It's going to be a great year. If you can hear, I'm just getting over COVID, as are many of you I know who are probably listening to this in your house right now. So, bear with my voice. And a special greeting to our Pivot Shift Ahead Facebook group participants. We love you. We are so honored that James Shaw, Jay Papasan, April Murphy, just welcome us coming here every week. And we're just really excited about that. So how this happened is I wasn't sure, because I have had COVID. I thought, well, maybe we'll have to start next week. And Jen Davis started texting. Now here's a new rule that you all need to know. Jen said, hey, can you help me with a couple things? I said, sure, let's do a Zoom. Now, Jen, you should know by now. I'm like, and you're like, yes, let's do a Zoom. I'm like, perfect.
It'll be tomorrow at noon.
Could you do a Zoom in front of like a couple thousand people?
Oh, well, as long as I get my question answered at the end of this.
I know, you will. You get, yeah, well, all the coaching. So like usually a lot of my guests, you guys, they come from that. They come from like, hey, will you help me on something? I'm like, oh, you bet. Will you help me? That's how we get a lot of our guests. It's called quid pro quo. Yeah. So Jen Davis is really one of my all-time favorite guests. He's like your third or fourth time, Jen, right? On here?
No, a couple times for sure. 2 or 3. Yeah, probably.
And so Jen, and you can kind of fill in your bio, but Jen now is a CEO of the Holt Group. Is that the name? Did I get that right?
It was Holt Homes Group through the end of last year, and we are rebranding as the Veris Network. So we we merged another team. We folded another team in with ours. So we merged with another team in our market center to create Veris Network.
That's awesome. Well, I did not know that. So this is a great way for you to announce that to everybody. Congrats. And you're in Springfield, Missouri. Yep. I'm assuming if you're calling yourself network, you're expanding.
We're going to expand. Yeah. We've got one expansion partner that we've had for the last 2 to 3 years. And now we're looking to go a little bit beyond that, which is exciting, right? We're ready for a new challenge. The opportunity is there right now. It's easier now than it's been. Specifically, with Zoom and virtual meetings and those types of things. So we're pretty excited.
That's awesome. I think one of the things I like about you, and a lot of our guests, know you by now because I pull you on. I'm never going to let go, right? You can never get rid of me, but I keep pulling you on. But you started in about 2008. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I've introduced you enough to know that. And you started off as a buyer's agent. And what I love about you is you just have years and years of like literally in the field experience where you personally like started off strong. And then you kind of grew a buyer's team, right? And before you became CEO, and running a team. And so you have so many great skills. And I just think that how you teach and talk about your buyers and how to work with buyers is exceptional. How many homes and how many buyers did you guys end up selling in 2021?
So last year we closed right at 525 units. 45% of that was buyers. So I would have to, if somebody had a calculator and could figure that out, that would be awesome. So 45% of 525.
That's amazing. And I think, in a year where inventory was really low, the fact that you did 55% listings is stellar. It's just stellar.
Well, it's interesting. I think we've always gone that route, right? Thanks, Jeff Norris, 236. That's how many buy sides we closed last year. So when we look at, for our team, we've always led with listings. The interesting thing about last year, though, is even as competitive as the market was with buyers, we really only wrote two to three offers per buyer. So the reason being is because we are a listing heavy business. So our buyer agents, the way that we help out our listing agents is to give them a buyer need. So we were proactive instead of reactive last year. We went looking for inventory when we needed it. So if you look at, you've got a problem, the problem is inventory. Let's be solution based and let's go after some inventory. And so I think that when we get to the space of looking at, it was hard to get listings last year. And it was the fastest way to help our buyers to either get listings or to find off-market properties and then make that with the buyer needs that we had.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're going to go over, I think really, I'm going to call it the 4 things you need in 2022 to have a really strong buyer business. Now, some of you this is going to land differently for some of you. So some of you who are watching are rainmakers and you already lead teams. And so for you, I'm having Jen go over really how she thinks you need to train buyer agents and coach to some holes in that, right? Which I am really excited about. That's going to be number 4. For those of you who are agents that are watching, whether you're on a team or not, the first 3 points are really kind of for you, right? And I would say, Jen, actually 3 and 4 are kind of for the rainmaker, because number 1 is going to be expectations. How are you communicating things to your buyer? Especially we've got rates that are going up. What does that sound like? And we're going to get into some dialogues with that. Number 2, we're going to talk about your planning. How do you plan the number of buyers that you need to work with to get into the pipeline and get closed, right? We know from experience over the last 18 months, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. You don't find 20 buyers and have 20 closings anymore. So we're going to talk about that. Number 3 is finding inventory. We are 100,000%. We are all going to still be squeezed for inventory this year. So we're going to talk about that. And I think that's where you rainmakers too can kind of think about what are you doing from a team standpoint to find those for your team. If you're just a solo agent, what are you doing? How are you cannot sell what you don't have? How are you finding things to sell? And then number 4, hole in the bucket is what you call it, which is kind of how to train buyers agents. Is that right, Jen? Did I get that right?
Yes, it is. So that's actually a Ben Kinney exercise, and he'll use it for really any problem that you have. I just took it and made it about the life cycle of a buyer, right? For a buyer's agent, how we train them, how do we find the gaps in their business, and then how do we plug the hole so that we can move that buyer forward in the process.
Yeah, that's right. I'll have Ben come on to talk about that because I use it now all the time. I
use it for everything.
Yes. It's so great. Yeah. All right, Jen, let's launch in and let's start with number one, expectations. So let's start. To me, what this is what is the dialogue? What are the dialogues that we are having, or we should be having anyway, with our buyers kind of into 2022? What is this sounding like? How are we preparing them? How are we managing expectations?
So I think first we have to start with a baseline for our buyers, right? So I want to know when I'm meeting with a buyer or I'm training a buyer agent to meet with a buyer, I want to know what their baseline education level is as far as what's happening in the market. So if I'm meeting with a buyer, it would sound something like, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, can you tell me what you know about the market and currently what's going on? And then I'm going to just stop and I'm going to listen. And based on the buyer's answer, I've got two choices. I can validate their answer. I can say that's exactly right, right? I can validate their answer and I can talk to them about the conditions of the market that they already understand. Or I can educate them. So I'm either going to validate or educate. So what I mean by educate is, if they come out and they say, gosh, I'm really looking to be able to negotiate 10% off of list price. And, I want to look at 10 to 15 homes, or I want to do any of these things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to educate them about what's actually happening in the market. What I find a lot of buyer agents do, though, is that they just start talking about the market as if the buyer is on our same level of knowledge.
Yeah.
There are very savvy buyers out there, and I don't want to talk down to them if they already understand the market. However, if it's a first-time home buyer or someone that maybe hasn't purchased a home in 10 years, we've got to establish what the baseline is on what they know about the market. So when we ask that question and we leave it open-ended, we get a good feel for where is this buyer at in their mental space of purchasing a home. And then we can go down of one of two ways, right? We're educating or we're validating. So if we're educating them, I'm going to talk to buyers about what's happening in the market. And I'm going to use a handful of different ways to do that. So if we're talking about expectations, I'm going to show buyers data, right? I'm going to have market research pulled. I'm going to show them average days on market, what we know about how many offers are being received in a certain area, contingencies that maybe we have to waive in order to compete for the offer, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk to them then in story form, right? We have to understand that our buyers have different personalities, just like when we're talking to, we're hiring on talent, right? We have different personality types. Some people that like a lot of detail, some people that really don't. And so what we're going to do is we're going to tell the story in a few different ways. One with numbers in order to set the expectation on the market. And one that we're going to talk about will be a story about a success with a buyer or a failure with a buyer. Because some people, a story or an analogy is going to land a little bit better than just market data. And so when we set expectations, I see, Alex is posting in here. Alex is talking about, what contingencies are we waiving? How many competing offers? We're setting the stage so that the buyer understands that. The reason that we do that early on in the process is because we've got to do it before emotion takes over. We want to have the conversation when the buyer is still in a logical space. So what I mean by that is if I do what we used to call a buyer consult, now we call a strategy session. Reason we call it a strategy session is because we're strategizing on how to get them the best house at the best price, right? Best price right now is whatever secures the deal, whatever gets them the house.
Right.
So when we look at it and we're talking to them, we're setting the expectations very early on, because if I wait until they found the house that they want to make an offer on, and then I tell them, hey, we've got to offer $25,000 over list price, all of a sudden they'll pull back and they're like, it's the first time they've heard. If that's the first time they've heard it, they believe that I work with the seller, right? They're all of a sudden they're like, well, Jen, I thought you represented us. I want to be able to negotiate. I want to get a deal. Well, now I've shown them property. I've found them the house that they want to make an offer on, and they have no real idea of what it's going to take to compete. And so now it's almost like I'm working against the buyer instead of working with them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we found is when you're working with the buyer, those expectations have to be very clearly communicated as quickly as you possibly can, and then continually communicated, right? It's a consistent communication from the time you talk to them on the phone to the strategy session, when you're in showings, and then when you're prepping the offer.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much because by calling it a strategy session, it's like a strategy. Is this the best time in their life to buy? Mm-hmm. What should they buy at this time? And then it's how to get it, right? Because I've been having people, Jen, like a lot of, in my world, admittedly, it's a lot of super high-end, luxury stuff. But I have a lot of people going, come on, really, are we in a bubble? Has the ship sailed? Is this really a good time to buy? And they really believe that. And I'm like, we are absolutely not in a bubble. You can't even, they're higher down payments right now. There is no way any house, at least in Western Washington that I know of, is going down over the next 5 years. It might neutralize, like we might slow down appreciation, but no real estate that I can really think of in the country, unless I'm wrong, is going to go down in the next 5 years. So we're not in a bubble. But, what do you say to people that are saying that?
Well, typically if someone's like, well, gosh, and I just want to wait it out, that's then when a story becomes really powerful. And you can say, I completely understand wanting to wait it out. Here's the thing with waiting it out, though. I had a buyer last year that decided not to move forward because they believed, due to, COVID implications and a lack of inventory and things that were happening maybe politically and, all the variety of things that have happened, they thought the market was going to undergo a shift. And the home that they were going to make an offer on a year ago was listed at $325,000. They would have been able to secure it at $350,000. Now that same house is being listed for over $400,000. And what happened is now they waited, and now they're priced out of the market. And my concern for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that if we wait, that continues to happen. What I know is what's happening in the market right now. And we can make a decision right now based on data that we have in front of us. If we wait, we're really basing our decision off of what we think might happen. Would you rather, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, make a decision based on the information that's actually in front of us, or a feeling of what may happen in the future?
You just reminded me. You can use those stories in video content too. Lucas Pinto, who's a really great Compass agent here in Seattle, I was noticing on his Instagram, he did this video and he was like, hey, let me show you this exact house. Here's the house, right? Here it is. And I should have bought it and I didn't. And it's gone up $150,000. And I just wanted to show you what happens if you wait. I thought it was such smart content. It's like literally a picture of a house, his personal experience, and, talk to me. I bet you we got so many leads on that. Lucas, if you're watching, let us know. But I think it's so smart to tell stories and give specific examples like that.
Because I can say to you, month supply of inventory is 0.2, right? It's 0.2. Well, you understand that because you're a real estate professional. You understand, like, oh my gosh, right? Like if here's where we're at in less than 10 days, if no new homes hit the market, we're going to be 100% out of inventory. You understand as a real estate professional what that means. There are going to be people that love numbers that understand what that means. But I'm going into a strategy session with a buyer, and I've got to make sure that they understand how complicated the market is right now and how competitive it is. Mm-hmm. And so what I know about, like, conversion, right? We all want to convert at a higher level. Conversion is a direct correlation from the conversation that we're willing to have with someone. So the better the conversation I have with the buyer and the clearer I am with what the expectations are, number one, the higher my conversion is in getting that buyer agency agreement signed. Mm-hmm. But number two, it's getting their offer signed later. Yeah. I have a coaching client of mine, Kyle Rawls. He was the one that said it. And he said, Jen, the perfect offer starts in the strategy session. And I thought,
I love that.
100% that's true. if I have the right conversation with them the first time I meet them, I'm setting us up to actually get to write one offer and have it accepted.
That's right. A lot of people wrote in chat, and I have also experienced this, where they're like, well, I want to talk to you about buying a house, but I'm not paying cash. And I just need to know, like, how much I have, like, what do I really have to do to make that happen? Right. And so I think that, what's great about that, that's such a common question, is you can say, well, that's exactly why we should meet. Because remember, everybody, every real estate conversation you should be closing that to an appointment. In this case, I love it. That's my new thing. I'm going to totally strategy session. Forget buyer consults. We are now going to, I'm just calling it all buyer strategy session. I love it so much. But, everything should be used to close. Well, don't try to sell them on the phone. Don't try to sell them at a dinner party, but set the appointment right then and there. Oh, Jen, that's great. That's exactly why we should meet. Let's have a strategy session tomorrow. We can hop on Zoom together, or we can go have coffee or whatever it is. But always work on closing your conversations into appointments. And if you walk out of the dinner party, or you walk out of the open house, or you walk out of wherever you are with the appointment set, that's good sales, not selling in the moment.
No, because if we do the strategy session right, what I hear from a lot of buyer agents is like, gosh, my buyers have buyer remorse, or, they're trying to, I'm having fall through because we get into this and they didn't really understand the repercussions of all the things that they waived. Guys, as agents, that's on us. This is what we do every day. If your buyer has buyer remorse, you did just what Via said not to do. You sold them something before you actually explained what was happening in the market. Those expectations will save your relationship with the buyer.
Right.
And they'll save the buyer from feeling like maybe they got either left behind or they made a poor choice. Our goal in this is to be good representatives of the buyer. I mean, that's the end goal. Yes, do we want to sell homes? Absolutely, that's my number one goal, but not at the expense of my buyer. Not at the buyer is ever going to feel like I pulled one over on them, or they didn't understand the process.
Well, the score will take care of itself if you focus on the process. We don't focus on outcomes. We in the moment, we focus on our clients and their needs and what's gonna, what's better for them, and then we get the sales. We never want to focus on outcomes. I agree. Now, we do want to focus on outcomes when we're submitting offers and negotiating, but that's not what we're talking about. Okay, I love this. So the bottom line is, just to summarize this first part up, expectations. And the reason we spent a little longer on it, if you're a newer agent, this is going to be the hardest part for you. It's going to be really, this is where you want to lean into whatever brokerage you're at. I know in our brokerage, you'd be coaching a lot with your productivity coach, with your team leader on this, is building up that confidence and the scripts and the, really the methods that you need in order to walk into a strategy session and be definitive and say, hey, this is what you need to do, right? A lot of you might be really well served starting off as showing agents, helping some senior agents, getting comfortable with a couple offers and, understanding the process a little more. That might give you more confidence behind this. But I do find that with newer agents, it's hard to walk in and you're counseling someone on a $500,000 home. And, by the way, you're going to have to waive everything and, give $100,000 earnest money deposit. That's a tough conversation if you don't have the full understanding, right? For senior agents, I would say really, really take a look at, are you kind of forcing that consult? Are you forcing that meeting? Are you being very, very clear about what's in front of them? And Jen, I don't know about you, what I always do in those situations is I always think of myself like a football coach, like a coach. And so I'm always like, look, it's going to be really tough out there, but we've got this together. We've got this. This is how I'm going to shepherd you through this process. We're going to put on our battle armor together, and I've got you. I'm going to go to war for you. But you do need to understand what's happening and have a clear understanding that if your budget's 800, we're probably going to cap the search at 700, right? 800 means 700. And so in our market. And so, let's explain why and let's understand why. A list price is simply the beginning of an auction, and so whatever your script is. So I love that. Anything to add before we move on to number 2?
No, I think you're exactly right. When the consumer has confidence, they make better decisions. They also will follow you where you want to take them if they believe that you're the right person to help them.
Yeah. That's great. Well, let's move to number two, because this is a near and dear to me. Pipeline tracking, or just figuring out the numbers to hit your goal, which, I think really is reverse engineering, right?
Mhm.
Basically. So how do you walk through that?
So if I'm looking at it, I have been in the business since 2008. I was a buyer's agent for a long, long time before I moved into this role. And I used to be able to say, if I were coaching a buyer agent that were brand new, that had no pipeline, and I would say to them, okay, if you wanted to put, let's say, 3 under contract in 1 month, you would need to meet with 9 new buyers. It was about how it worked out, right? It was about a third of the people you met with would transact in the same month. That was industry standard. I've checked it myself. I've checked it with coaching clients. I've watched it. It's different now, though. And so when we look at the pipeline report, I look at it and I think, gosh, if we used to want to, let's say, have, like on our team, our agents are expected to have 5 pending per month. It used to be for 5 pending per month, we needed about 7 to 8 A buyers, right?
Mhm.
It was pretty much, we're going to get the majority of them under contract in the month. It's not the case anymore because of the competitive nature of the industry right now and what's happening in real estate. What I found is we have to have probably 2.5 times the number of people in our pipeline that we used to, maybe closer to 3 in some luxury markets, right? In some markets where they're still seeing, 20 plus offers. Mm-hmm. When I look at it now, if our buyer agents say, gosh, I want to close 60 units in a year, that was very doable 2 years ago with very few buyers in the pipeline. Now, when we're looking at it, though, in an effort to find the right now buyers that actually can compete in today's market, you have to have 2.5 to 3 times the number of buyers in your pipeline. So if you look at that, you look at it and you're like, gosh, number one, I have to meet with that many more people. I have to set that many better expectations, right? We talked about that at the beginning part of it. But I also really have to understand the buyers. I have to understand where I'm going to spend my time within this pipeline, because some newer agents are going to struggle with it. There are buyers that show up and you're going to meet with them at a strategy session and they're going to sound like a right now buyer, and they're not willing to compete in today's market. That's where the buyer agency fatigue comes in, is because we're used to running with the people that we thought could buy right now. But what we're not asking is, can you buy right now? We're asking, will you buy right now? Is your sense of urgency so high that you will do whatever it takes to compete in today's market?
Okay, wait, that's kind of a mic drop. So not can you, but will you?
Will you?
That's great.
So the example that I give on this is, if I were, my son plays basketball. I have a 10-year-old son that plays basketball on a competitive team. And he wanted some Air Jordans, right? And it's ridiculous that I'm buying him Air Jordans, and I did, right? So the way that I would describe it is, I go into a store and they have 1 pair in his size of shoe left, right? They have 1 pair, he has a game tonight. I walk into the store, there's somebody else that pulls the shoe off of the shelf. And I say to them, hey, I've got to have those shoes. Like, I'm so sorry, but my son has a game tonight. We have to have the game. We have to have these shoes, et cetera, right? And that person says, no, I've got to have the shoes. Am I willing, if I'm a right now buyer, I, right now, for those shoes would say to that person, you know what? I need to buy these shoes today, but I am going to pre-order you shoes to be delivered to your house in 3 days. I'm going to buy, right? If my sense of urgency is, I'll do whatever it takes to get these shoes, including buying your kid that I've never met before a ridiculously overpriced pair of shoes. Those are the types of buyers that we have to look for right now. Do they have to buy, and are they willing to do what it takes? Not can they, will they?
Did you do that, by the way?
Yes, I did.
I know. I was like, that is way too specific. I knew, I could tell.
100% I did it. But I mean, he's cute. If you follow me on social media at all, he's a very cute kid. He deserved the shoes.
Yes. Oh my God.
But when you look at it, I think what we miss with these buyers is We talk about a right now buyer, and the number one question I think that a buyer agent misses with their clients is if you're my buyer and I said, I know that you want to be in Springfield, Missouri, and you need to be moved here and here by, let's say, the end of February. In the event that we can't find the home that you're looking for, what's your backup plan? And here's the reason that I ask that.
Yeah.
If you say to me, Jen, I don't have a backup plan. I've got to be there. My job starts at the end of February. I need to really be there a week before so I can be settled. My kids can be at school, blah, 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 blah. I know that you're going to do what it takes to compete. But if you say to me, you know what, my sister lives in Springfield, Missouri, and she said I could stay there for 3 or 4 months, and, I could live there until school gets out, and then I could look over the summer and blah, 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 blah. And you have a very detailed backup plan. Guys, the backup plan is the plan. That's the plan A. And so I think that's the one thing when we're looking at our pipeline report, we're looking at it and we're saying, gosh, I have 5 to 7 or 8 to 10 right now buyers. Do you? That would be my question for you. Do you know your buyer's backup plan? And do you have enough buyers? For us to be able to service the number of buyers we want to in 2022, we have to have 2.5 to 3 times the amount of people in our pipeline than we traditionally had to.
Yeah. It's interesting. When you talk about pipeline, do you kind of just have now buyers and everyone else, or do you kind of do A, B, C?
So I do it a very near an ABC, but it's the 30-day buyers are for me right now. I know that they don't have a backup plan. They're the only people I'm showing right now. Then I have 30-day buyers with issues. So the issue could be once something changes, they become an A buyer. It's what some people would call a B buyer, right? But they have a house to sell. They can't compete until their house goes under contract or sells. And then anybody else is going to go back to our inside sales team. For those of you that don't have an inside sales team, that's the time to leverage your CRM, right? Anybody that's more than 30 to 60 days out, that's when you put on auto plans or smart plans or whatever CRM you're going to utilize. But that's when you start leveraging technology to do some of your follow-up so you can stay in front of the right now people.
So I love that. I've always used Dirk Zeller's pipeline, since about 2012, 2013, which is A123, B123, C123. And A's are now, B's are 30 to 90 days. Just the thing, B, to your point, they either have to, there has to be an activity. Their lease has to end. They have to be moving here. They have to sell their house, right? So they're kind of ready to go. That's the difference. And a C is just everyone else, right? And B's and C's are pretty much automated, although there's some manual tasks with the B. A's are more manual. And so that's how you can, keep track of your pipeline. What I always say to my agents, and it was really interesting, Jen, we haven't talked about that 3 to 1. That is totally the number. I was like, wow, I'm blown away. Because for me in Seattle, when I was coaching my agents, and even now when I coach agents, I find 10 to 12 A's hopefully is going to yield you 10 to 12 constant A's should get you 2 to 3 deals a month. And I'm like, well, maybe let's do the math on that. Then double B's, and then C's can be unlimited. So oftentimes I would have agents, especially if you're a newer agent, because by the way, what's the best way to get a B from a C? What's the best way to get an A from a B, right? So, and you'll have some pop in at different points, don't get me wrong, especially if you're lead genning. But what I find is you have a lot of agents where they're starting to get really busy doing the activities, newer agents especially, and you're just working people up the pipeline and they just haven't hit A yet. If you keep doing the work and you're a new agent or you're relaunching or whatever, and you keep really good track of who you're spending time with per gen and everything, you'll get there eventually. This activity is you're moving people up the pipeline. Then you have to get really good, to Jen's point, at like how you're spending time and who you're spending time with and what you're automating. Automating meaning they're on searches, they're on auto plans, they're getting, neighborhood reports, whatever it is that they're getting, right? We can do pipeline management's like a really important aspect of sales, but
it's probably it's the predictor of your business, right?
It is, yeah.
So if people say, well, when can I hire a showing agent? when you can show me a pipeline report that's going to show me
Mhm.
how much money that you can make over the next year, then you've earned the right to bring
That's
on
right.
a showing agent, because
That's right.
we can predict what their income will be then.
Well, that's right. And, and I think the other thing is that it calms people down when they're stressed, when they're feeling like they're doing all this activity. The other thing it does is all of us get internet leads now. It's virtually impossible not to. You physically, humanly, like can't keep up with that. All these B's and C's, you will lose them if you don't throw them into some kind of an automated system. We're going to touch on a lot of that this year. We're going to kind of build your business, this year using a lot of this stuff with our guests. And I really want you to hear this on pipeline. Like, you've got to have some kind of a pipeline. And I have no problems with a whiteboard. If you are a solo agent and you don't have a lot of leverage, I really don't. A, B, C, like I said, 1, 2, 3 is their relationship with you. So number one means they've signed an agreement to work with you. And if they're an A1, they're your next deal. One means they've signed a buyer loyalty agreement or buyer brokerage agreement, whatever you call it, or a listing agreement. 2 means they're probably going to work with you. Just for whatever reason you don't have one signed, get it signed. Like, I never had my parents sign one. Like, they would have been a 2 technically. And then 3 is just hope is your strategy. On my team, we always said, you can have like a Zillow freebie showing. And if you're going to convert a Zillow, they're really expensive leads. Get out there, show them, and then try to close for the buyer consult, which I'm now going to call strategy. And they would have been a 3, where they're going to buy right away. It may not be with you. Right. So, so a 1, 2, 3 is kind of the addition to that. If you want to get into the weeds, and we have tags on our Brivity CRM, 9 tags that we effectively, move up the pipeline. So when I would coach Jen, my agents on my team, I would go, okay. And I would search for all their A1, A2, A3 and go, well, you only have 3 A's, but you have, 24 B's. So you're going to keep going. Sometimes I would have like 10 or 12 A's and there would be no B's. And I'm like, if you don't start lead generating, you're going to filter through this and you're going to have nothing next quarter. Like, you're going to have no business. And so it's really important to have a pipeline, whatever it looks like for you.
Exactly right.
All right. Sorry. But that's a little rabbit hole, but it's
accurate.
All right. So number 1 was kind of managing expectations for buyers. Number 2 is really knowing your numbers, knowing how many A's, I would argue B's and C's, but how many you need to get to your goal. So you're going to reverse engineer back out of that. And then number 3 is finding off-market inventory.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? Like, we're all licensed agents, or hopefully are, if we're working with clients. If you look at
One would hope.
If I have a buyer that would buy a house right now, and my only issue is inventory, I have the capability of finding the inventory. I can call for sell by owners. I can call expireds, not that they're that many. I can do a circle dial, right? Or a circle prospect session. If I know my buyer and my buyer needs, then I know where they want to be. I know the location they want to be in. I know almost everything about what type of house they're looking for. And so I think the single most frustrating thing for me as a buyer's agent that will say, gosh, I can't get anything under contract because there's no inventory. Well, there's no inventory on the MLS, is what you're saying to me. And the second part of that is that you're saying, I'm unwilling to get uncomfortable to look beyond the MLS.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And
it's 100% what you're saying. Yes, agreed.
By the time the houses are in MLS, guys, it's too late. It's just too late for some of our buyers. So if you're looking at an FHA buyer or a VA buyer or somebody that's going to have some different contingencies in there, how in the world are we going to have them compete? Their choices are going to be things that have been picked over, right, for some reason or another. Or we can go find them inventory. And so, circle prospecting was pretty low, I would say, on our list of lead generation tools about 18 months ago. And about 12 months ago, we decided we've got to do something different. If my commitment to my buyers is that I'm going to find you the best house at the best price, that means I've got to be uncomfortable. And so a lot of times people will say, but gosh, Jen, what seller would in their right mind would not put their home on the market in today's market? Lots of them. There are lots of people that don't want people in their house right now. There are also a lot of sellers that don't know what's going on in the market. I'm not saying that I'm tricking them. I'm being very honest with them about what their home would bring if they put it on the market. I'm also not saying that my buyers aren't willing to compete for the house. So when we look at it, all we're doing is we're trying to find opportunities for our buyers that are off market. And our buyers are willing to pay for the convenience to not compete. They're not getting a better deal, essentially, right? They're just not competing with 15 other people. They're going to secure the house, but they're going to pay what it takes to secure the home. So in search of inventory, where we used to have, let's say 3 to 4 homes to show a buyer, and now maybe there's only one, the time spent on a buyer is no different. We're still spending the same number of hours per buyer. It just looks different. So instead of showing them homes, we're searching for homes. We maybe only have to show them one house and it's an off-market property. So I think that would be, if you were looking at the number one way to be successful with buyers in 2022, it's to go find the inventory for your clients.
Okay, so let's talk about circle prospecting. Let's kind of dive deep a little bit. Do you do letters? Do you do, digital? Do you do phone calls? Do you do door knocking? All of the above? What does that look like?
We do all the above. So I typically look at lead generation as like it's going to be in layers, right? So if I know that there's a certain area that a buyer wants to be, that's an amazing opportunity, especially if it's a subdivision, right? There's like a very small geographical area that we can go to. So we are absolutely going to door knock it. We're absolutely going to mail letters to it, and we're going to dial it. So the dial can sound pretty like laid back, right? So if I call and Bea, you answer, I would say, hi Bea, this is Jen Davis with Veris Network. Are you the owner of 123 Main Street?
Yep, that's me.
Did I catch you at a good time?
I mean, I'm kind of busy. What do you need?
Well, I'll make it really quick. I'm an agent at Keller Williams, and I have a client of mine that is looking specifically to move in your neighborhood. And I was wondering if you knew of any of your neighbors that were looking to sell.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I don't know if we are, but we've talked about it actually. It's kind of interesting timing. We were just talking about it this weekend.
Oh, really?
Like, I just don't want to have a bunch of people through my home right now and have to clean it and do all the home prep,
Oh gosh, no, I get that. The buyers that I'm working with actually have been searching in your area for about 90 days. And they are looking to be in there relatively fast. They've got some flexibility on time. Have you had anybody pull any numbers for you to kind of see what your home is currently worth?
No, I mean, we got on Zillow. I know you guys probably don't like that, but we did get on Zillow and we saw that, and that's what kind of made us think about it, because we didn't realize how high it had gotten.
Were you happy with the number that Zillow was providing?
Maybe. I think I'd need to learn more. I'm not probably understanding how much it costs to sell my house, like all the costs involved. So I'm not sure yet about that.
Cool. Well, if you had some time, either later today or tomorrow, would there be a time that maybe I could swing by and just kind of run through actual numbers for you about what's going on in your market, and kind of talk you through what that would look like if it was something that you were interested in?
I mean, I feel like I wouldn't want to waste your time. I am sort of interested, but I just don't want to, we're really not sure. Like we just talked about it.
Oh,
so I just would feel bad about that.
Oh, no, I don't feel bad about it. I'd love the opportunity to just swing by. It honestly will take about 20 to 30 minutes. And number one, I can see if I think it would be a good fit for the buyer. That would be number one, just before we get, too excited about anything. And then number two, I can at least give you an idea of what's going on in your market, so you guys can have further the conversation, right? You guys can decide, is it something that we're interested in or not?
Yeah, I mean, okay. Maybe, yeah. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe like Friday.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay.
So basically what we're doing is, number one, we're going into it with, do you know the neighbor? And typically they'll say yes or no about the neighbor, and then we work it back to them. So you made it a little bit easier on me because you said that you were interested in it. But what we're after is just getting in the door and piquing their interest. The thing about circle prospecting, though, is we get people excited about it, and then they do what you do or what you did, and they're like, well, maybe Friday. And then Friday they cancel, and then we never follow up with them. And then what we see is 2 weeks later, that house hits the market because they ended up calling somebody else that they got
That's
a
right.
from.
It opened the Pandora's box, and they called who they were comfortable with. You're
That's
so
right.
right. Yeah.
So what we've got to understand about circle prospecting is that follow-up is so important. That's why we do all of it. That's why we door knock. That's why we send a letter. That's why, we're doing all of the steps along the way for it. And all we're trying to do, it's to your same point earlier, every conversation is to set an appointment. I'm going to make it seem almost like I'm doing them a favor, right? I'm making it seem like, number one, I don't even know if it's going to work for our buyers, right? At this point, I'm not trying to get a listing. At this point, I'm trying to help a buyer. Clearly, eventually, I'm going to go after the listing if it's not going to work for our buyer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And we had the other thing is what we call the golden letter. And the golden letter can be used it's a misnomer. It can be a letter, it can be digital, it can be a text, whatever. So Robin's gonna find the link. We had a great episode on just that, where we spent most of the thing on that, which is basically hey, is there a price you would sell? I mean, the gist of the golden letter is, hey, I know your house isn't on the market, but would you sell if you got a certain price or whatever? And then you go from there. Yeah, that's great.
You're using it to build up what your own private MLS would be. That's what we're doing. We're keeping a tag in our CRM that basically says, this is a would sell list. And so if we have a buyer, we can search by tag for a would sell list. And we're looking anywhere from 85 to 125 properties at a time of people that don't want their home on the market, but would sell it for a certain price. Well, if I have a buyer that fits for, awesome.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And I've literally door knocked with letters and with permission, with pictures of my clients. Like, they are real people. Here they are. They literally have made 2 offers. They haven't gotten them. And, and people know when houses are on the market in their own neighborhood. So I think personally, if you have a buyer need, it makes me braver to lead gen. So don't you think circle prospecting was the one form of cold calling that I never minded, because I felt like I was working on behalf of my buyer. But if you would have said just cold call a neighborhood, I might have gotten a little nervous.
Agreed. The other thing is, guys, don't hesitate to tell your buyers what you're doing, right? So if I have a buyer that I can't find something for, I'm also going to make sure they know it, where I'm going to call via and say, hey, it's Jen. I know we haven't seen anything new pop up on the market over the last, 5 to 7 days. And I just want to let you know, today I did dial through Rivercut subdivision to see what opportunities I could come up with for you that are maybe off market. So as soon as I have an update on that, I'm going to let you know, because then she's not sitting there. The buyer's not sitting there thinking, well, gosh, that my agent's not doing anything for me. I'm finding every house that we go look at on Zillow. I'm saying to you, this is what I'm doing in addition to what you can actually see.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it is so important to do that. And it makes you look like a rock star. Yes. I mean, that is who they hired, right? That is their expectation, especially in 2022. That's the expectation now. They know that part of your job is going to be to go, find deals, basically.
Drum it up. Yep. Drum up the business.
Well, I want to be sure that we have time for what do we call it? What do we call it?
Ben calls it the hole in the bucket, but I'm going to just point out, looks like a hose. So I'm going to go with a hole in the hose.
Okay. I call it a reverse S, whatever we're going to call it. The fourth thing is, and I think a lot of solo agents can still get a lot out of this, but especially team leaders and what we would call rainmakers. This is a great way to look at the life of a transaction and getting a client, procuring a client, and looking for holes and being clear on where you're coaching your agents and where you're self-coaching, right? Do you want to share I don't know, how do you want to do it?
Well, I guess I'll send it to you, I guess, later and we can post it up there, but I'll just kind of talk through it.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at it, so it's basically a reverse S, and I'll just hold it up. So the first thing is lead generation, right? So we've got to be able to lead generate for buyers. The next potential hole, so these are all potential holes in the process, would be lead follow-up. So when we look at what the hole is, the reason we say these are holes is if I do a great job on lead generation with buyers, but I really stink at follow-up, is it going to help me to add more buyer leads? No, because they're going to come out of the hole right here. So this is a way to look at what are the opportunities in our business to shore up. That way we know what our focus should be on to eventually get to more referrals. So the next one would be the strategy session. So if I'm looking at this and I do a really great job on like bringing in leads and I do a great job of following up with them, but I get to the strategy session and I don't set expectations and my clients can never win an offer, do I get more referrals for more business? Never. That's my goal. Or I do a great strategy session, but I never get the buyer agency agreement signed. Do I want to put more leads in the funnel just to have them get here? No. So what we're doing is we're looking at this as like a training idea for those of you that train buyer's agents. You could switch it and you can use this for any issue that you have within your business to find out what your gaps are. The next thing would be showings. If I am doing a great job and I bring in clients and I get the agency agreement signed and then we get into showings and I'm always late, or I forget to set the appointment with the seller, or, you know, we never really get to see it before it goes under contract, that's my hole. The next step being negotiations. Can I negotiate a successful contract? Can I get something under contract? And the next one being closings. Closings is like the last send off, right? Before we're going to get hopefully a never ending referral base from our clients. So when you and I were talking about what does it take to work with buyers in 2022, I thought about this exercise and I use it a lot. And I thought it takes having no holes in your hose. It takes that you have mastered each section of being a really rock star buyer's agent, right? If even one of those pieces is missing, you're not going to, I don't believe you'll easily be able to hit the goal that you have for yourself in 2022.
Okay, so I love this so much, and I'm going to also plant a seed in that, right? So I break it down with my sales force. How I break it down is I do contacts, appointments set, appointments held, agreements signed. By the way, our sales process ends in agreement, not in a closing. Just to be clear, agreement is the most important thing because it's your buyer, brokerage agreement or your buyer agency agreement, you call it, or your listing agreement, right? Then it's, getting into contract, and then it's closings, and then it's referral, right? So the reason I say that is I find there's a front end and a back end conversion problem. The front end is, can they set the appointment? Are they setting the appointment? And then on the back end, are they, where is the holdup? Are they holding a lot of appointments, but they're not progressing past that point? Or are they not setting enough appointments, but when they get them, they're doing a good job? Oftentimes what that does, team leaders, is it shows you who's talented at what. If someone's really, really great at setting appointments, which by the way is the hardest one, the front end conversion is by far, but it's normal. It's the hardest one to coach to and the hardest one to fix. Back end conversion, if someone's making a bunch of appointments, usually we can coach and train them into converting those appointments, but they might be a good ISA. Like they just might be someone exceptional at setting the appointment and the work itself isn't suited for them. But you also have agents who are maybe not great at setting the appointment, but they're amazing converters. They're really good buyer's agents on your team. Like, don't write them off just because they're not setting the appointment. And you might want to look at who's in what seat of the bus. But in order to use the hole in the hose reverse S, you have to be tracking certain things.
You have to be tracking everything. And I think agents get overwhelmed about the tracking source of it. And so what they think is, I'm just going to add more leads. I'm going to buy more leads. I'm going to spend more time lead generating. And they never look at any other point after that. right? They never
Yeah.
look at what the opportunities are. And so, there takes some emotional intelligence, and you can do this for yourself. You can look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm really great at, like, if I looked at it, I could say, I'm really great at lead follow-up and strategy session. I do prefer to have the original lead generated for me. If I'm being honest, from an ISA, I love a warm lead from an ISA. It's my favorite thing. But if you look at it, you can look at it with emotional intelligence and say, okay, by adding no more effort into this, I can have more closings at the end of the year. All I have to do is, with the same number of leads, I have to increase my skill set all along the way. Because people will typically say, well, gosh, if you're not on goal, you either need to increase skill or activity. Most of the some of the time it's activity. Some of the time you're just not actually spending enough time lead generating. But for those people that show up every day to do their job, it's very rarely activity, and most of the time it's skill. We just have to figure out which skill they need work on.
Yeah, you're so spot on correctly. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about early on. It's math, IJM, it's just math, guys. And so it's like, okay, I'm not maybe the best at setting the appointment. All right, that just means for every, it's going to take me 40 contacts to set an appointment, and it might take, Jen, 15. It's just math. You just have, what are you willing to do? Are you understanding your math? Do you know your ratios? My team leaders all know their ratios because I show them to them. And I basically show my team leaders about once a month. I'll say, okay, for every 100 people you talk to, you're going to, you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sales. Right. And so you just have to know what those numbers are and reverse engineer. Right. But you have to track these numbers every day. And I say it like a broken record, but the easiest, quickest way, because it's really hard. If you're really great at sales, you're not good at tracking numbers. In fact, if you're really good at tracking numbers, you're probably not a wired salesperson, honestly. Like, they are mutually exclusive, most likely, for most people. So text yourself contacts that day, and a contact is a back and forth conversation about real estate. It can be text, it can be direct message from social media, it can be phone, in person, but it can't just be, hey, I like your dress from Nordstrom, like, or where'd you get it? I got it at Nordstrom, whatever. Like, it has to be a real estate conversation. So contacts, appointments set, appointments held, agreements signed, contracts that, we call them pendings, that they go pending, and closings. And you could do referrals. Well, I love this, Ms. Davis. You are amazing, and way to be clutch within like a 24-hour notice. And you guys, we're already starting to line up guests way better than 24-hour notice. So every single Wednesday, tune in. And by the way, if you kind of take the time to work through some of these numbers that Jen and I talked about, you're going to, especially with the S, and understanding your numbers, you're going to know which ones to tune into more. So you're going to start going, oh, I didn't realize it, but I really, really need to tune into those webinars that are talking about how to get the appointment. Or, oh, I realize I'm really good at setting the appointment. What I really need is how to do a killer strategy session and listing appointment. And I really need to spend the time and understand that. So you'll know more about where you need to spend your time on skill training and everything if you know the numbers are everything. They're everything, right? So thank you so much. We appreciate you so much, Jen. And for all of you, I appreciate you so much. Please keep reaching out. I love it when you respond to our emails, and I love getting your suggestions on topics and people. And we just have a great community that we've created here, and I've missed you, and it's going to be a great year. So thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.